Good morning and welcome to the Zoning Committee. And it will please come to order at this point in time. At this time, I would like to welcome our committee members, Committee Member Radiant Cordero and Committee Member Matt Wire, and the illustrious Council Chair, Mr. Tommy Waters. Committee members Dos Santos Tam and Kia Aina are excused from today's meeting. Although remote oral testimony is being permitted, this is a regular in-person meeting and not a remote meeting by interactive conference technology under Hawaii Revised Statute Section 92-3.7. Therefore, the meeting will continue, notwithstanding loss of audiovisual communication with remote testifiers or loss of the public broadcast of the meeting. Members of the public will be allowed to provide oral testimony on all items on the agenda in two ways, remotely and in person in the council chamber. Oral testimony will be allowed when each agenda item is taken up in the following order: remote testimony and the in-person testimony in the council chamber. Before testifying, each person shall state their full name and the agenda item they are testifying on. Each speaker may not have anyone else read their statement and is limited to a 1 minute presentation per item. All persons who have registered to testify remotely by video conference or phone will be called upon first. Okay, when your name is called, please monitor your screen and activate your audio feed when prompted. The following are some friendly reminders and tips. Video conference from a quiet location if possible. If you are watching the proceedings on Olelo, please mute your device at the time you're called to testify. When the timer on the screen reaches 0, please conclude your remarks promptly. And for those who are joining us by telephone only, I will identify you by the last 3 digits of your phone number. When your number is called, please press *6. Unmute yourself when prompted. Once all the remote testifiers have testified, I will then proceed on to the in-person testimony in the council chamber. Persons who have not registered will be given an opportunity to speak following the oral testimonies of the registered speakers. Written testimonies, including the testifier's address, email address, and phone number, will be available to the public as described on the posted agenda. As a courtesy, please turn off all cell phones. Members of the Council of the Zoning Committee and Chair Waters, may we proceed on to agenda item number 1, Resolution 23-104. This particular resolution adopts a revision to the public infrastructure map for the primary urban center development plan area to add a government building symbol to allow for the acquisition of property at 222 North School Street in Kalihi for the Department of Community Service staff and operations. Members, we have posted to the agenda a proposed Committee Draft 1 version of the resolution. For your information, a summary of the amendments is listed on the agenda. Okay. Okay. Staff has requested that I repeat the resolution number. It's Resolution 23-107. It is not 104, but 107. So at this time, we have from the administration, Director Don Takeuchi Apuna from the Department of Planning and Permitting. Ms. Apuna.
Aloha Chair, members of the committee. Dawn Apuna, DPP. We are in support of the proposed CD1 for this resolution 23-107, and I have staff here available for any questions about the PIM process or otherwise. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions for the director? Yes, Councilmember Cordero.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Director. Thank you very much for your explanation. And I was just wondering, relating to what DPP has issued for comments. I know that this is in an area that both is I guess, touches the Kalihi Palama area as well as the Laliha area at the bottom of it. And of course, it states it's in the Kalihi area. However, it shows that DPP are only solicited or requested comments from the Laliha Neighborhood Board number 13 and not the Kalihi Palama Neighborhood Board number 14. And I was just wondering, what is that process as to why not soliciting from the second neighborhood board since it states it's in the Kalihi area?
I'll have staff,
Okay, cool.
Jeff Lee, one of our planners, come and explain. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, please come on up, state your name, and what department and division.
Hello? Okay. Hi, my name is Jeffrey with Department of Planning and Permitting, staff that worked on the PIM process. So the project site is located in the Laliha Neighborhood Board area, so that's where we did send out the request for comments for that area.
However, I do see that it was also presented to the Kalihi Palama Neighborhood Board, correct?
For this project, I don't
You don't think so?
believe so,
Okay.
because it was more focused on the immediate neighborhood board area.
Okay, understood. And so I don't know the boundaries between, like, I don't want to get into I guess getting into the technicalities of saying it's in the Kalihi area versus, let's say, the Laliha area, and I don't know, like, the different distinctions of towns and things like that. So I guess when this comes up as under the Kalihi area, of course, you would understand that people from the Kalihi Palama Neighborhood Board area or boundaries would pay attention to it, and even though they see it's just above their boundaries. So I was wondering, would we still define this as the Kalihi area or Laliha area?
Most likely it should have been, I guess, the Lehigh area to be more, to make it easier to identify it and less confusing for the public.
Okay. Also, and I guess also for the, just for the public's knowledge about the PIM process, I meant to ask that first, actually. Would you be able to share a little bit about the process? Because currently there's, it's a proposed property for sale, and if there is or isn't money, does that affect the PIM, and do we need a PIM before or after? So would you be able to explain that?
Sure. So thank you for that question. So the PIM process is it's more of a budgetary process, budgetary tool, where it's more allows council an additional view outside of the normal CIP budget process. So where it doesn't, where we do the proposal for the project, and we look for the general location, knowing that certain agencies may be looking into either acquire land or using funding for construction. So a lot of these are long-term projects sometimes, so they can be put often years in advance before the actual CIP, the budget is appropriated for that project. And then oftentimes there are other cases where properties may come on the market, and due to the short time frame and the opportunity, the time frame is a lot shorter. But oftentimes these are more of a more just of a budgetary tool. So we just to identify that a major infrastructure project is going to be located in an area.
Okay, and the sources of funding and timeline or timeliness of funding does not affect the PIM?
No, it does not. Well, not on our end at least.
Okay, understood. All right. I think that's all the questions I have for right now. But I just want to share that it used to be in my district, so I definitely know that area well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Okay, Chair Waters, please.
Thank you, Chair Say. Hey, I just had a basic question. If the city already owns the land, right, like Ali'i Place, where we're leasing out the building, or the building is leased to a Lee place, but we own the land. Do we need a PIM symbol there?
For even with property that the city does own, if construction funds are planned in the future, as part of the PIM ordinance, it is a requirement, so it may need a PIM symbol.
You said if construction's required. In this case, there's already a building there.
But this is for the 222 North School Street?
No, I'm just talking in general.
Oh,
I'm totally supportive of this
Okay.
particular reso, but I'm just curious about the whole PIM process, PIM symbol process. So in the case where the city already owns the land and there's going to be no construction, do we need a PIM symbol there?
So based on the PIM criteria in ordinance 4-8, if it has any significant developmental impacts to the area or development capacity, we would usually review it to see if it meets any of that criteria. And usually the triggers is land acquisition or construction. So if the city does own the land but plans to either change the facility from one building to another use or function, or it is looking at doing significant renovations that would expand the site, we would kind of review that project and then determine if a PIM would be required. If that answers your question.
Yes, in very general terms it does, but being more specific, I can ask it offline. Thank you, Chair.
Okay.
Okay. Councilmember Cordero.
Thank you. Hi, Jeffrey. My question is relating to, and I know this, PIM is very general and it doesn't go into the technicalities of like development and even traffic or transit uses or even like possible need for like more water use. But currently, if I could just like do a comparison between the current use of the building as an office building versus the very possible use of the building in the future, which would be a Kupuna Resource Center, and the different, and I don't know if there's going to be any housing plan in that area, but if there is, when would that process of possible need for water use determination and traffic and transit determination or mitigation and management needed to be, when will it be looked at? Will it be in the development process and will it come to the council, or are we able to talk about it now?
That I would probably leave more towards the agencies on the planning, but usually those types of details are tied more to the planning and design phase of the project.
Okay, well, never mind, no need then, okay. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Any further questions for the council members? Thank you very much, Mr. Lee.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. If there is no further questions, members, can we proceed on to the Department of Community Services? Director Anton Crockett.
Thank you, Chair, council members. Anton Crockett, Department of Community Services Director.
Please proceed.
We're just at the beginning process, and the PIM is required at the end of the year to proceed with what we want to do. But one of the visions for this property is we need to acquire the land underneath. We have a structure with the current owner of the building that has an interest in the land relationship to bring that over to the city at an incredible situation for us. I could see the Department of Community Services consolidating its operations with Kapalama and also down street in downtown Chinatown, Merchant, and Bothell. And so we could get more of our divisions together. We would be able to open up a senior community center, and we would be able to double the amount of interactions we've had with seniors. And we saw in the newspaper the increase in senior population. It's a big issue for our island. And so we would have a walk-in center there. We'd be bringing the Section 8 people up there. It would also allow the city to expand BFS and core in the properties that we're in there by bringing them out. There's a lot of storage in the building for all the records that we do. And in addition, it would allow us to allow the city in the Department of Customer Service to really have a nice DMV center there a couple on Mahali. So we think we'd have increased services, better use for the city. And when it all comes down, you'll be reviewing the deal and how it comes about. So we're very supportive of this PIN.
Okay, members, any questions for Director Crucky? Okay, members, and for the general public, the process is that we are here this morning and seeing that that particular property be designated as a PIM. Would Jeff, would you like to come up and explain to the general public and the members what is a PIM? I'm going to walk you through the process. Oh, can you take off your mask? Don't be afraid. Jeff.
Hello? Okay.
Okay.
So again, Jeffrey Lee from DPP. So the PIM basically stands for a public infrastructure map. So oftentimes currently we have the PIM map, which identifies future major public infrastructure projects corresponding to each of the 8 DP SCP areas.
Okay. And within the PIM, what do we have to follow? The Oahu development plans, plus the primary urban center plans,
Oh, for each one. Yeah. So the 8 ones are the primary urban center, the PUCDP, the Central Oahu Sustainable Community Plans, the EVA DP, EVA Development Plan, YNI SCP, the North Shore SCP, Ko'olau Loa, and SCP, Ko'olau Poko SCP, and East Honolulu SCP. So for each of those 8 areas have their own corresponding public infrastructure map areas.
Because I'm just happy that, this is what you call transparency and openness, that this is the start of the journey, that a request was made by the Department of Community Services to DPP that if we do acquire the property, Councilmember Wire, if you read the testimony, who is the owner of the property?
Oh, I have to go back and double check, Chair.
It's the Atherton Trust. Who is the lessee of the property? Councilmember Cordero.
Central Pacific Bank.
And Chair Waters, what does Central Pacific Bank have in that building?
I imagine office space. This is the one right by Chun Hoon Lane and
Stillman
School
Lane.
Street.
Stillman Lane.
And Stillman. Yeah, no, great building. It's
Yeah.
really, really nice.
It's basically a data center at this point in time, if I stand corrected. Okay, the chair doesn't have any other questions, but just to educate the general populace of the process of what we're going through. That's all. Okay. At this time, thank you very much, Mr. Lee. We can
Thank
now
you.
proceed on with the remote testimony. Madam Clerks, do we have any remote testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
Thank you very much. Okay, we will now proceed with in-person testimony. Clerk, do we have any in-person testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
Okay, thank you very much. At this point in time, is there anyone else in the council chamber who would like to testify on this particular resolution 23-107? If there is none, members who are in discussion. Okay, Councilmember Cordero.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity, Chair. I'm very supportive of seeing what we can do with this property. Hopefully, we'll be able to execute the purchase of the property. But I would also like to point out that this provides an opportunity to allow for DCS to transition a lot of their employees if this happens and we do develop on it. And not only will it provide a place for seniors for resources, but also for, I don't want to say consolidation, but I'll say it because I don't know any other word for it, but better consolidation for DCS as well. And I look forward to that because as we see for the other PIMs, this will also help, and I'll make the same comment, overarching for providing, I guess, better services to the area. But also this area, especially behind the CPB building, or the current CPB building, needs a lot of attention and love and activation. So I'm excited for that area, even though it's not in my district anymore. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Wire, any concerns? No? Okay.
No, Chair, thank you.
Chair Waters, any other concerns? Okay. At this time, the chair would like to recommend that Resolution 23-107 be amended to the posted Committee Draft 1. Are there any discussions, any objections or reservations? Hearing none, the resolution has been amended to a Committee Draft 1. The chair then recommends that Resolution 23-107 Committee Draft 1 be reported out for adoption. Any discussion, objections, or reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. Well, Director Crockett, best wishes to you as you move ahead on the acquisition. And we hope to have it consummated by Mr. Lee and Director Apuna by the end of the year, if it's possible. Ask the mayor to have an executive order. No, I'm only kidding. Okay, let's move on to agenda number 2. Resolution 23-106. This resolution adopts a revision to the public infrastructure map, once more for the primary urban center development plan area, to add a government building symbol to allow for the acquisition of property at 560 Halekawila Street in Kaka'ako to provide city-owned office space for city employees. Members, we have posted to the agenda a proposed, once more, Committee Draft 1 version of the resolution. For your information, a summary of the amendments is listed on the agenda. Joining us in the council chamber is Director-Designate Catherine Tashner from the Department of Land Management, who will be providing a brief presentation. For your information, the presentation is available online at Departmental Communication 350 of 2023. Ms. Tashner, please.
Good morning, Chair, Council members. My name is Kat Tashner. I'm the Director Designate for the Department of Land Management, and I have some very brief slides to kind of orient everybody about the potential acquisition of 560 Halekawila Street. So here's a very brief overview of the property. It's currently owned by the Hawaii State Federal Credit Union, and it's being used as an office building. The asking price is $9.9 million, and there's just kind of some property information available on the slide. Next slide, please. I think one of the biggest pluses for this property is it's so close to a lot of other city offices, including, Honolulu Hale, the HFD and HPD main offices, the Alapa'i Bus Transit Center, and so it's really convenient for continued city operations. It's also, located right across the street from the future rail station, so really cool TOD opportunity. And when you look at the Civic Center, TOD plan, this area really is kind of the government hub, so this is just consistent with that. So some of the main acquisition benefits include the proximity to the existing city offices. It's a TOD opportunity, and we get to use the existing building. There isn't a lot of construction that's going to be required. In fact, when the credit union moves out of the space, they might leave behind a lot of the cubicles and other personal property that the city could use. And finally, it would give the city an opportunity to offset some of the rent that it's paying to lease other city office spaces from private landowners. And so, I provided this acquisition timeline to the neighborhood board when I presented to them, but just kind of giving them an overview of what is a PIM, why do we need it, why is there a special zoning committee hearing? So this is kind of the timeline, if there's a line item in the fiscal year 24 budget for acquisition of this property, which would come online on July 1. Thereafter, we're looking at a 3 to 6 month due diligence period and then closing after that. there are any questions, I'm happy to take them. Otherwise, thank you for your consideration.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions for the interim director of the Department of Land Management? So right ahead, Councilmember Wire.
Thank you, Chair. Mahalo, Director, for being here. I just want to clarify, so is this for DLM staff, or would it be in someone else's inventory, or stay in your inventory and then be?
Great question. So this would be for use by the city generally, not just for DLM.
Okay, awesome. And then it'll stay in your inventory, or how does that work?
Likely not. The plan is for, like other city office buildings, for DFM to maintain it. And so we've been in communication with them, trying to bring them up on speed.
No,
Thank you.
perfect. So like in this situation, you're almost acting like the city's broker. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
No, mahalo for that.
Okay, members, any questions for the director? The chair has a couple questions. What was the reaction, Ms. Tashner, from the Ala Moana Kaka'ako Neighborhood Board?
Very positive.
Okay. Number two, do you think you can bring down the dollar amount of what the value is in regards to the property and the building?
Any acquisition will need to be supported by an appraisal, which will establish the fair market value.
Well, the chair of budget is here, so I'm just popping this idea, Chair Waters and Chair Wire, that, hey, maybe we can work out a deal in regards to, paying no property taxes for that new building that they have just completed renovating. If you could consider that as part of the overall negotiation, but okay, no, I'm in strong support. Let me ask you this question. I hope you can respond. When I was with the state, we did have a department, DAGS, a Department of Accounting General Services, that did all of the state leasing. How much are we, as a city and county of Honolulu, paying for lease rent outside of our city properties?
That's an excellent question, and something that I think supports this acquisition. In terms of just office space leasing, over $1 million per year.
Okay, great.
The city also leases, warehouse space, but for office specifically, over $1 million per year.
Okay, any other questions for the director? I think it's a great acquisition for all of us because it will save the county in the lease rent that we're paying as of today. But Council Chair Cordero, please.
Thank you. Director Tashner, I was just wondering about the letter from Scott Nakasone relating to the childcare within the mile radius of the property. Is that required for all PIMs or government buildings?
I will defer to my colleagues at DPP for a response to that question.
Jeff, would you like to come up and respond to Council Member Cordero's question in regards to childcare?
Childcare is, so this is Jeffrey Lee from DPP. Childcare is not usually one of our requirements for part of the PIMs, but we do send out requests for comments from the agencies to see if to see any of their concerns regarding impacts on services, or if they have any comments regarding the project that can kind of get early on.
Okay, and it just depends on, they don't comment on all the different PIMs or projects, but they chose to comment on this one. Do you know if there's a reason why?
I'm not too sure why. If you want, we can follow up with them to see if there's any particular reason for that one.
No, it does say that it does not affect DHS or anything related to childcare facilities and homes. So I was just wondering because I didn't see it for the last PIM, but see it for this one.
Most likely, oftentimes when we do the mail out, we determine which agencies may be affected from the project. So then we go through our list and we kind of sort out which ones we think would most likely be affected and which one we would like to get comments from. Sometimes we do send to other agencies who may not have any particular relationship, and then they may have a standard comment of such.
Okay, got it. Thank you. I guess now this question is for Director Tashner relating to use or possible uses of the property. And in the long term, Director, do you see this just being for office space?
This particular building, yes.
Understood. Thank you. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Director.
Okay, any further questions? I have a couple more. Ms. Tashner, this is a building that I go and visit maybe once a week just to pay my bills. The question for me is, would we have enough parking stalls for our city and county workers?
That's an excellent question. So I think there's about 80 or so parking stalls that come with the building. I'm informed that at a maximum, the credit unit had about 160 employees. So no, there isn't a one-to-one parking ratio. It is down the street from the Alapai Bus Transit Center, but parking obviously would, like with a lot of other city facilities, is not on a one-to-one ratio.
Okay, and the final question for me, that particular building does have a lot of windows, I hope.
Yes, I mean, there are windows on 4 sides.
There, you know, interim director, there was a measure before this committee about, oh, I can't talk about other things. I'm sorry, but I just brought it up for clarification. Okay, any other questions for interim director Tashner? If not, thank you very much for taking the initiative. At this point in time, members will proceed with the remote testimony. Madam Clerk, do we have any remote testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
Thank you very much. We will now proceed with in-person testimony. Madam Clerk, do we have any in-person testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
Okay. At this point in time, members, we are in discussion. Chair Wire, you're looking very serious up at the
screen.
screen.
Just making sure I wasn't missing anybody.
Okay.
But yeah, no further comment.
All right.
Appreciate Chair's guidance on this.
Okay. Okay. At this point, then, if there's no further discussion, the chair recommends that Resolution 23-106 be amended to the posted Committee Draft 1. Any discussion, objections, or reservations? Hearing none, the resolution has been amended to a Committee Draft 1. The chair then recommends that Resolution 23-106, Committee Draft 1, be reported out for adoption. Any discussion, objections, or reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. Best wishes, Ms. Tashner, on the project. Moving on to agenda number 3, Resolution 23-100. This resolution adopts a revision to the primary infrastructure map for the primary urban center development plan area to add a government building symbol to allow for the acquisition of property at 2043 Dillingham Boulevard in Kalihi for the Honolulu Emergency Services Department Administration Facility. Members, at this point in time, we have posted to the agenda a proposed Committee Draft 1 version of the resolution. For your information, a summary of the amendments is listed on the agenda. At this time, we have the Director of Department of Planning and Permitting, along with her assistant, Mr. Jeff Lee, to testify. Okay. Dawn?
Thank you, Chair. DPP is supportive of the proposed CD1.
Okay, thank you very much. Next, we have Dr. Jim Ireland, Director of the Hawaii Emergency Services Department. Please.
Thank you, Chair. Just for some background, when I was hired by the city and county as an emergency medical technician, I did my interview at our headquarters at the airport, and next year that will be 30 years ago. We're still at the airport in leased space. Previously to the state transferring over EMS to the city, the state took care of that funding of that facility, and our rent is somewhere around $650,000 a year. Our lease is ending in about 18 months, and my expectation is it could go up somewhere in the neighborhood of $700,000 to $800,000 a year. So rather than continuing to pay lease space there, we looked at a area within the region we could relocate our headquarters to, as well as potentially put an ambulance in that station as well. And what we found is an area currently owned by the Blood Bank of Hawaii. They are relocating to Kapolei, and this would be for that building, which is in our upcoming budget for both CIP as well as an additional 12-hour ambulance to serve the Kalihi area. So for us, it makes, I think, good financial sense, but at the same time, we get a place to put an ambulance in that community, which the nearest ambulance to that would be at the airport on one side and at Kuakini Hospital on the other side. So it really creates a much-needed EMS resource, as well as allows us to save a significant amount of money in rent, moving forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Members, any questions for the director? Okay, Chair Waters.
Thank you. Good morning, Director. Hey, I'm just curious, how many people does the current headquarters at the airport house?
Ian? Right now about 45, but if we have an EMS unit with us at that station, at any one time that could be 2 or 3 more people. We do anticipate potentially expanding as well. So we would need probably a space for 50 to 60 people. It's a 15,000 square foot building. It currently has 42 parking spaces, but also there's a rail station going literally a block away, plus or minus. So we're really hopeful that this will allow our West Oahu employees to come into work by rail. But we feel that the building is large enough to house our existing emergency services and EMS staff. As you probably know, Ocean Safety, that division is headquartered out of Leahi Street over in Kapiolani Park area. The plan right now would for them not to be moving over with us to this facility. They would stay where they are. And as you know, there's developments with that division as well as their potential future being potentially in their own department. So the plan right now is to only have emergency services, department staff, EMS staff, and leadership in the what I call the blood bank building.
So is the building currently sound and able to accommodate 50 plus people?
I believe it's large enough. It will need some, I would say, I don't know if minor is the right word, but some internal modifications to kind of build out some office space, because the downstairs is more, I don't know if you've ever donated blood there, but it's kind of an open space surrounded by a ring of offices. We would want to reconfigure that. Upstairs is mostly offices. Another plus is they have a kind of a covered area where we could put 2 ambulances underneath, as well as a large generator already in place to for emergencies, because that's where they store all the blood. So it's large enough, but it would need some internal reconfiguration.
Okay. Do you know if the blood bank already moved out of the space? I know that because Hart was going to take a portion of it away through eminent domain, they may have already found the alternate space. I mean, we're not displacing the blood bank, are we?
Absolutely not. In my meetings with them, they have a donation center on Young Street now. The last time I donated blood, though, was at the blood bank on Dillingham, this proposed location. But their long-term plan is, my understanding is they've already acquired property in Kapolei and are building a brand new facility there for both donation and storage. So it's my understanding they plan to leave, whether we purchase this or not, within the next year or 2.
Terrific. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Chair Waters. Councilmember Wire, followed by Cordero.
Thank you, Chair. Mahalo, Director, for being here. Great project. I had some more, I guess, just technical questions. So how does the HESD acquisition process work? Do you have someone designated to just doing acquisitions, or is that a burden someone has to pick up on top of other work? Or do you understand the question? Or
we work with DLM for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. So then you work with DLM, but then maybe the other property came through because it didn't have a department yet, but this one is coming through with you being here because of its purpose to be under HESD's inventory. Is that correct?
I think I think our lease is coming up at the airport, and it's, is that a 5 or 10-year lease? 10 years, right? Yeah, so, what happened is about a year ago with our lease coming up in a year, it's about 18 months from now our lease is expiring. We started kind of internally saying, is this something we want to continue with, sign another 5 or 10-year lease, especially with now the city having to cover that rent versus reimbursement from the state. Not that it really matters, but I think it just seemed prudent for us to have a structure that we own, that we could modify, that we could make our own. And so probably a year ago, we started looking around, and this is not, we probably looked at least a dozen other properties and spaces. And again, it had to meet the size requirement. We wanted it to be centrally located, reasonably centrally located. And also, if someday, 10 or 20 years from now, this isn't our headquarters, could it still serve as a regional facility for ambulances? And kind of once we met all those criteria, that's kind of how we ended up at this place. It's on the rail line. Our employees could come in by rail. It's close enough to Honolulu. I can run over here for meetings. So it kind of met all our kind of checklist requirements. And so kind of that's how we ended up at this place.
Okay. And I appreciate that. I'm asking just because we're looking at, in relation to this, and these questions and the acquisition process, as we're looking at just department structures, right? And to what extent like a Department of Housing and Community Services comes into play, and like what role DLM plays. And then I know different departments handle different stages of the acquisition. Sometimes they're doing the acquisition entirely in-house. And so that's kind of why I'm asking if that makes sense. Like if in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, is DLM kind of serving a function where, say you're like, oh, we need a property, tell them, they help you guys find one, and then you go through an acquisition process, they do the due diligence. Is that kind of how it works?
Exactly. So we worked with DLM as well as a DCS, and they were really the lead, and we kind of gave them the list of the things we needed. And then once the properties were identified, we did go look at them. And I'm not an expert on structural things, and so other people from the city do that. But we just kind of outline our needs and then hand it off to them to help us find, and then they will help us with the acquisition. DPP's involved as well.
Okay. I'm asking because I just remember, like, as a planner at DCS, like, we're running to get the check to escrow before the end of the year to close on like some of these CDBG properties. And I'm thinking, okay, if we're looking at overarching structure, what works in terms of department interplay if we're going to be making modifications? I know administration too is looking at the idea of a housing department and whatnot. So appreciate all the info. Mahalo, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Cordero, please.
Thank you. Hi, Director Ireland. I know we've been talking about this for a while as conceptually, and also, I'm glad that we are at this point, because when we first started talking about possible use for a blood bank, of course, we've experienced we've heard about and experienced, in my case, the different communications between the blood bank property and also the eminent domain that's going to take place. And since the eminent domain is going to take place for that easement on the current blood bank property, I was wondering, will that affect at any part the vehicles, the ambulatory vehicles that will be at the blood bank property?
I don't see it impacting our operations at all. Again, in the budget, our proposed budget, we do have an ambulance slated for Kalihi, and we do plan to base it out of the blood bank. We had some meetings with the community recently. It was well received, and I think it's a big community, it's a busy community, and we really want to put an ambulance there, and I think our headquarters fits there as well. Again, with the right on the rail line, being able to get off at work from the West Oahu commuters. There were some improvements we want to do, particularly with solar and energy savings. But otherwise, like I mentioned to Chair, the internal improvements we need to do. But really, it's a structure that's pretty much ready to go for us.
Okay, thank you. And for the ambulance, is it just going to be one ambulance? Is it going to be just one or multiple units?
I think we still need to decide the exact deployment. We may put an ambulance there. Well, we're for sure going to put an ambulance there, but we may also have a paramedic rapid response SUV, possibly. It could be it could be two ambulances in the future, but primarily in the beginning, it'll just be one.
Okay, understood. And with the current, well, it's current and it's going to be final. Final specs for Hart's plan for Dillingham with either no left turns and certain no turns on Dillingham. Do you anticipate or worry that it may affect the ambulance response times coming out from the current blood bank property?
I don't have any concerns, and that's such a ideal place because it's close to H1 westbound. It's also close to the Honolulu Freeway up Middle Street. It can go into Kalihi pretty easy and down to Nimitz. So it's an area that, while it'll serve primarily that area right around the station, it can get to other areas pretty quickly. So I'm not too worried about movement. And it's a transit hub. The buses are right there. So the lanes are big and the turns are adequate. So everything I know about the space right now will suit us well.
Okay, that's true. I mean, yeah, going into our other parts of Kalihi, I would say Kalihi Kai, but I think going into maybe the Valley or Mauka side, since Pu'uhale is one way currently, you would have to go right on Dillingham and then go up either Moku'ea or Kalihi Street, which I think is fine, but I still hope that I trust that you know that the routes will play out well to service the rest of Kalihi proper and especially Mauka, even though it's not part of my district up there. But yeah, okay, that's good. Also, since there's some ambulatory services and maybe just core that's currently in the Delight Bakery property, are you planning to transition them to the blood bank?
Yes. So the core team who is temporarily occupying Delight, some may go to the blood bank, but I think even more of them will go downtown Chinatown and Ivalai itself.
Oh, okay.
We're just temporary stewards of the Ivalai property, and that I think the long-term plan for that is housing.
Okay. Oh, housing for which property? Ivalai?
Sorry, Delight.
Oh, Delight. Okay, sorry. Because you said Ivalai, then you said housing, and I was like, oh, wait. Okay. All right, got it. Okay, sounds good. And speaking of Delight, with such funding restrictions for that property, and there's still going to be a need for either retail services or even health services. I want to say like community health services. And I know I've talked to you about this for not the blood bank property, but since HESD is going to be at the blood bank property, is there going to be a possibility to collocate other uses at this property since there is that need and the property at Delight is going to be mainly affordable housing?
I don't think we're going to have any space to do medical care at the blood bank property. KKV and Kalihi Palama both have federally funded health centers in the Kalihi area. They actually provide really good care for folks who utilize those facilities. But I do hear what you're saying as far as the need for medical care in Kalihi. I think more our mobile core responders helping people on the streets when needed and bringing them back to a clinic, I can see, but probably not actual medical care at the blood bank. Okay, I just think, when we were down there, I told you, where I grew up, where I lived and everything in that in that Kalihi Kai area. And if we look at where KKV and their campus is located, Kalihi Palama and where their campus is located, and then if we look at the Kalihi Kai proper area, there's still that lack of, there's that gap, I would say, in the service of Kalihi, and that's where I think the gap is. So I just thought it could be a good opportunity, and whether it be at that property or at an adjacent property, I think it would have been a good place so that we can show that these locations around the rail line aren't just for retail and housing, but also to service a lot of the services that people need in the area. And that's, I think, what's really missing. And I think during the
even past TOD plans, something that a lot of our seniors in the area really wanted. And so I just really want to highlight that and to see if there's a way we can kind of jumpstart the ideas for other people. And it would be great if we house it with our city properties or city agencies. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Any further questions? Chair Waters, no? Okay.
Not
please.
of Dr. Ireland, of perhaps Don
Okay,
Taguchi
okay,
at
Don.
the appropriate time.
Okay. Any questions for Dr. Ireland at this point? The chair has just two questions. The acquisition of the blood bank facility and property, is that equated to that 5.9 million that you're looking at in the presentation?
Yes.
Okay. The next question was, I was of the opinion throughout my 2.5 years here that the corridor of the rail was where Hart was condemning property. A case in point is the one going Diamond Head, Chair Waters, which is the Service Printers property that is going through condemnation. My question is, why can't Mr. Pang have Hart acquire the property on behalf of Dr. Ireland? Have you communicated with Hart on this?
We have, and we need the building and for our needs. And I do understand that they do need an easement portion of the property for the rail line.
Well,
But
it's gonna,
for
yeah, but the easement's going to affect your operations too. That's why I'm just saying, why can't they buy it on behalf of HESD and not spend our general obligation bonds to acquire it? That's all I'm saying. I believe in the project. Don't get me wrong. I go to the blood bank not twice, but every 3 months. My point to you is, can we defer this resolution to find out what is Hart doing on your behalf? Or shall we just pass it?
I would just appreciate passing it. We have this in our CIP budget. You know, our lease is coming up, and we're going to have to pay that rent money if we have to re-sign that lease for another 5 to 10 years. I understand what you're saying, and I'm just not sure if Hart can buy properties and give them away to other city agencies. So it seemed more prudent for us to just put in our CIP budget, buy it, and then get out of this, $7 million of rent we would have to pay over the next 10 years at the airport.
Okay. Any other question? The chair just wants to see if Hart has the resources to acquire these properties on the rail corridor. That's all it is. And if they cannot even help a city department, I don't know what, we're all in the same boat. So that's the reason why I asked the question. Then the second question would be, what is your deadline for the acquisition? I'm trying to help you.
Call on my DLM colleagues.
What is the timeline for the acquisition? That's why if I was to defer this resolution and call Hart, if you don't mind, Madam Chair, to find out where are we in the acquisition of the blood bank? For Hart, not you, Hart.
Right. So Hart initiated an eminent domain proceeding for a portion of this property. Hart also initiated the subdivision of the easement from the larger lot. That's tied up in litigation. Part of what we're trying to understand is can we do this simultaneously? The blood bank is moving to its new location in Kapolei. We are hoping to time it with that, as well as the expiration of the HESD lease at the airport. It's not as prescriptive of a timeline since we're all trying to. But we're hoping early next year.
Okay, so Madam Chair, you can save $700,000 in lease rent if they're going to get it done by this year.
From the airport chair?
Lease,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
It's just something to consider, but you could also use that to acquire the property, right? But I'm just questioning why Hart. Madam Director Tashner, I did not know that particular property is in litigation along with the Takara property on Dillingham. Okay. Well, they all have to come back for the appropriation anyway, just that we're just designating it to put it on as a public infrastructure map. Any other thoughts? Chair Waters, please.
Thank you, Director. Hey, I'm just curious, could you expand or expound a little bit more? Hart, through eminent domain, wanted a portion of that property. I'm just looking on my phone on maps. The building itself is about 10 feet from the sidewalk, right? And then the sidewalk is about 4 or 5 feet from the road. What exactly did Hart take, and what can the city expect that the Hart's going to need? And how does that affect the existing building?
So I'm not involved in that litigation, but my understanding is that the Hart sliver portion goes to about 6 inches away from the building.
So are we going to have columns right next to the building?
I'm not sure what Hart's plans are, but that is the portion that they are looking to take.
And you may not be the one to answer the question. Can I actually have someone from DPP? Is Director Takeuchi Apuna still here? I'm just looking at your review and recommendation pertaining to a revision to the primary urban center development plan and public infrastructure map on page 2, findings of fact, subsection B. You've obviously thought about this. Honolulu Authority for Rapid Transportation proposes to acquire a portion of the site through eminent domain for rail guideway right-of-way. At the time of this report, action on the proposed subdivision of the project site has been deferred. So can you tell us what that means? And what does action mean? Action on the proposed subdivision, meaning they're not going to subdivide it? And because remember, we were talking about the Mauka shift, right? Does that affect this property at all? Do we need to worry about having a column coming right through Dr. Ireland's new building?
Okay.
Because why buy it, really? If Hart's going to come in and take it, right, or we got to move it, it sounds like they don't need it because they're going to subdivide the two pieces, but it'd be good for you to explain that. Let's start with that. Does Hart need the easement? Yes or no? I mean, if you can't answer, you can't answer.
Okay. I can't speak on behalf of Hart. Sorry.
Okay. I mean, you folks are suggesting that we put a PIM symbol and then acquire the property. Those are the kinds of questions we should really be answering, right, before we purchase the property. The PIM symbol, to me, it's not a big deal. It really is acquiring the property. Why are we going to acquire the property if you're going to have a column from the rail going right there? I mean, did you guys look into that?
I don't exactly know what Hart's going to do as far as, to the inch, but when I went out there and did a walk with Hart, the columns are actually going, it's my understanding, in the street, but there has to be a shift of the street to the Mackay side to accommodate the column in the middle of the road. So it's actually the street that's moving over a little closer to the building, which will, I think, change the distance from the current road to the building now. But in no way should it affect anything we are going to do in the building, and I don't see any columns necessarily going on the existing property. It's more the guideway and where they have to shift the street. That's my understanding from the walkthrough I did with Hart, because I had the same concerns. I wanted to make sure, we were going to be looking straight up into the train and that sort of thing, but it was more just the way the street's going to have to get moved over in the lanes and then the sidewalk.
And then is this, when we were there recently announcing the opening of rail, it was going back and forth and it didn't seem too noisy, but you never know. Have you thought about that? You're going to have your business right below the train. Is that noise-wise going to affect their ability to do your job?
I mean, I don't think so. I mean, there will be trains passing. It will be out in the street in front of us, but no different than a lot of the other businesses that are along the rail line. we may not put certain offices on that side of the building. We may use that more for classrooms or other rooms. But I think, when I looked at where the proposed columns were and where the proposed guideway is and the shift to the street, it did not seem like it would impact our planned use of the building. And same with, getting in and out of the building, both for our own cars as well as the emergency vehicles. It seemed like it wouldn't impact it as well.
You may or may not be able to answer this question, but if we are in litigation, I'm presuming that the blood bank did not want the easement to be taken over by Hart. But since they're moving, are they still suing us?
My understanding is still in litigation.
And purchasing this property, would that help solve that problem so that they're made whole and we no longer have to deal with a lawsuit from the blood bank?
I think that would be a question for Corporation Counsel, but that's possible.
Okay, and just bringing these things up because hopefully you folks are all thinking about stuff like this. Actually, could I have one more question, Director Takeuchi Apuna? Okay, I'm going a little bit off track, speaking of rail. But anyway, last week we were here on a 201H project with Stanford Carr where Kamehameha Schools owned the land and they were building, a tower, 2 towers actually. But Kamehameha Schools, what they did was they kept the bottom floor for commercial activity. Just saying, could we do the same thing here? Turn it over to a private developer, build up, right? Whether it's for housing or whatever, but we retain the bottom for the ambulance guys. Utilizing the same idea, right, that Kamehameha Schools did.
I'm not sure if that would fall under the definition of a public structure, whether we could use that as commercial use. So we'd have to look at that more carefully. But I think it is a good idea to optimize the use of the building.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. How can we utilize that space right next to the rail line, build affordable housing, and take care of our ambulance at the same time? Okay. In the meantime, ambulance can go on Halekauila Street. Okay, nobody thought that was funny. Thank you.
Okay. But, if Hart's going to acquire. Okay, Council Chair, excuse me, Council Member Cordero,
Yeah,
please.
thank you. Oh, heck no, I don't want to be council chair. Okay, so I was wondering, because that's a really great point what council chair just brought up regarding the need for services or ambulatory services in Kaka'ako too. I know that was something we talked about for the last 2 years, Director Ireland. So I was wondering, okay, I know this is so off topic already, but relating to how we're addressing the need for ambulatory services in the Kaka'ako area.
I mean, we need that everywhere, to be honest. But I know Queens Medical Center does have a urgent care facility in the kind of the Salts area. There's a number of doctors' offices kind of in a ring around that area. We're talking about medical care, right? Not ambulance. Yeah. But no, it's a growing population. There's big buildings in Kaka'ako, and we have a pretty massive doctor shortage in Hawaii. But I think both Straub and Queens are, I think, putting primary care and urgent care locations in different places on the island in key areas. We do have our federally funded healthcare centers, including Waikiki Health. So I think it all contributes, but more would be better.
Okay. Oh, sorry. I also meant ambulance.
So as far as ambulance, we do have a Kaka'ako ambulance also proposed in our upcoming budget. HESD has identified some land in the Kaka'ako area near the Children's Discovery Center for both an ambulance unit as well as ocean safety facility. And so we have that in our planning as well.
Okay, thank you. And then as for the blood bank property, do we have a timeline for that? I know that we're going through the PIM and I know it's general, but is there a particular timeline for, even though blood bank is slated to be out in a year, is there a plan for being fully operational for HESD in that property or on that property?
Well, we do have another 18 months approximately in our current lease at the airport. If the Kalihi ambulance is funded in this next budget, we could potentially move in there sometime around the end of the year at the blood bank, potentially, plus or minus a few months. If we don't have that property, we still will have the Kalihi ambulance funded. It just may not be in Kalihi. It may be at the airport, or it may be at our Yonge Street station in Makiki, because right now we really don't have any facilities to keep it in Kalihi.
Okay, thank you. And in relation to the, being right next to the rail station, I think there's a little bit of a leeway for height for that particular property. And I know that it's not in the discussions right now, but if it is, do you think, would you plan to going higher in that area?
I don't think so. I mean, the building's a good-sized building. It meets our needs. I think if someday, like I mentioned, we were to move our headquarters somewhere else in 10 or 20 years, that facility would still be a great hub to keep one or more ambulances to service Kalihi, the airport, and also as a depot for supplies, because every kind of region of the island needs its own cache of emergency supplies in the event of a disaster, tsunami or something. So that building could also serve for that as well. And I think I mentioned it has a large generator already. So as far as keeping it powered and that sort of thing, the infrastructure's already there.
Okay, well, actually, that's really good to know because, and you saying that actually reminded me, and I know once again, way off, but HFD having their, I think, emergency units like at the training and resource branch or area that they have. So that's good to know. And I'm glad that that's a good location for such emergency equipment. I know that in relation to the airport, and this goes for all properties where city is leasing a space, are you going to have to break down everything that HESD has invested into the airport park place?
I think the only significant piece of infrastructure at the airport that will require a breakdown is we do have our backup dispatch center there. Dispatch has moved to the JTMC, that's the primary center, but we will need to put our backup dispatch center somewhere. Blood bank is one possibility. The Mililani Mauka State Training Facility, if that moves forward, is another potential space for EMS to use if we are going to be involved in that project on a smaller scale, as well as some other locations that we already have on Oahu. But that's the main thing we would have to kind of dismantle. The backup dispatch, that was our primary dispatch for about 10 years, and prior to that, it was actually in the old control tower at Honolulu International Airport. So that's the one thing we would need to break down.
Oh, that's very interesting information. I really appreciate you sharing all of that. And going back to the actual property, I know that just in and around the area, there's such great use of like made in Hawaii businesses, and then in between it, there's a lot of residents. It's so dense in that area. And so first off, I know that just as oh, I got cut off. Okay. I see how it is. I don't know. What was I trying to say? Okay, so just as the Mokuʻea Eluini community is very welcoming to CORE being in that area as they were to HFD, what if this moves forward, is there going to be a plan for outreach for HESD to the surrounding businesses and residents that are in and around the former blood bank property?
Yes, and we did meet, our Deputy Santee went with the neighborhood board, I think, within the last month or two. But we would want to celebrate getting an ambulance in that community because, like I said, airport and Kuakini Hospital are the two that kind of surround Kalihi now, not actually in Kalihi. And it's a very busy area. There's a lot of people who live there. There's a lot of businesses. And there's a lot of calls that are generated within that region. So this ambulance, if we can station it at the blood bank, will improve response times, and it'll also take some of the pressure off our Salt Lake and our Charlie 1 ambulance, which flank Kalihi currently.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Councilmember Wire.
Thank you, Chair. No, I just want to say these are actually really great questions, and so I appreciate everyone coming down, particularly our city staff, because it's definitely helpful and informative for me, and so really appreciate all the work you're doing. Thank you.
Okay, Chair Waters, one final.
Thank you, Chair Say. Hey, the most persuasive argument for us to do this is to save taxpayer money. So you're saying that, well, what is your current lease rent now at the airport? And we're paying who, the state?
It's approximately $650,000 a year.
Yeah.
And I believe
Who's the landlord?
It's a private, those are, my understanding is those are state lands, crown lands on long-term lease to these businesses that own the airport complex. Who is the landowner?
No, that's fine. So we're paying about $650,000.
IPA is the landlord. Like I said, when I interviewed for my job at the city in around 1993, 94, that's where I went for the interview. So we've been there 30 years. The fire department had their headquarters in that building until they were able to move to their new building. There's still the police department in our building with their radio shop. And downstairs, there's a place where they count votes. So that's a city facility.
No, we've been there. Well, just the thought, why couldn't we get a bigger space that would house all those departments that you just described? That way we can save the taxpayer a lot of rent.
Yeah, so for us, it's about $650,000 a year. And the lease, like I said, is up in 18 months. I anticipate the new lease, I'm sure, will be $700,000 plus, maybe as much as $800,000 a year. So, long term, we don't want to pay that.
Your lease, no, again, that's probably the most persuasive argument to do this, so that you don't have to pay that much money. But I'm curious, you have a year and a half left on your lease. Now, within that time, how confident are you that you're not going to have to come back to us and say, Budget Chair, we weren't able to put this deal together in time. We need another $800,000 for our lease rent where we're currently at while we're waiting for this building to get ready for us. How confident are you that that's not going to happen?
I mean, I think we have planned this out reasonably well as far as the need for the PIM. We put it in the budget, and we've gone through all of the due diligence, I think, at the building with the other city departments up until this point. And like I said, you folks, I know this is new information for you folks, but we've been at this at a year now, looking at other properties, visiting other properties, all kinds of analysis as far as cost, location, if it's going to make the neighbors mad, do they want us there, do they want an ambulance next door to us, all these things. And this is what we came to. But it's a process, and there can be a hiccup along the way that would make me come back to you and say, hey, we need to do this because we thought we were doing that. But I think if everything goes well, I really think that this will be successful and will allow us to exit this lease in a year and a half.
Because I'm just looking at it, took notes. So first we got to give the PIM symbol. Then we got to acquire the land. Second. Third, you want to settle the lawsuit with Blood Bank. 4, Blood Bank has to move out, right? Because are they still in the building or have they moved to their new building?
They're still in the building.
They're still in the building. So they got to build their building first, then they got to move out of their building. And then you need to reconfigure the space to suit you folks, right? Just like any other building, when my law firm goes and moves in a building, we build out the space. You need building permits for that. If the building permits are going to take over a year, which sometimes they do, and maybe Director Takeuchi Puna can tell us, no, you guys go into the front of the line for your building permit, right? Then you got to do the construction to redo it. So that's what I'm asking you. With that all in consideration, are you going to come back to us and say, what, we need the $5.9 million to buy the building, plus we're going to pay another $800,000 in lease rent for that year, that we're not going to be able to get all this stuff done in time?
I'm going to ask Director Tashner for the Halequila space first.
There you go. But just to keep all that stuff in mind, right? I mean, it's going to be hard for all this to happen in a year and a half, is all I'm saying. But today we're just doing a PIM symbol, supportive of it. It's a good idea. We don't want to stop the ball from rolling. So thank you,
Okay.
Chair. All right.
Okay, thank you very much. Members, can we proceed on? Okay, Councilmember Cordero, you have a question?
Okay, before I get cut off again. All right, so I hope that you would consider Director Island, because I know that there's a lot of space that you've been looking into. And also, we've had these conversations for forever relating to locations around Dillingham and what could be utilized, and of course restricted by funding or whatnot, but looking into where HESD can be a good partner for the communities that it serves, and possibly other types of uses for the spaces. So I just want to plug that again. And yeah, that's not a comment. That's not a question, just a comment. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Director Ireland. Let's proceed on, members, that will now proceed with the remote testimony. Madam Clerk, do we have any remote testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
Thank you very much. And we'll now proceed with the in-person testimony. Madam Clerk, do we have any in-person testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
Thank you very much. Members, we are now in discussion. If there is no discussion, the chair recommends that Resolution 23-100 be amended to the posted CD1 as the site of a PIM at the old blood bank. Any discussion, objections, or reservations? Hearing none, the resolution has been amended to a committee draft 1. The chair then recommends that Resolution 23-100, committee draft 1, be reported out for adoption. Any discussion, objections, or reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. Mr. Chair, thank you very much for attending and the questions. At this point in time, members, there being no further business, the meeting is adjourned. You're welcome.